Do you find yourself running out of time to accomplish your work? Are you spending time doing things that you're not that good at? There are effective ways to outsource these tasks so you can focus on your business. This is the Virtual Success Show. We bring the inside scoop on outsourcing success for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. And now, here are your hosts, Matt Maloof and Barbara Turley.
Morning, everyone. Excited to be here for today's episode of the Virtual Success Show. Good morning, Barbara.
Hi, Matt. How's it going?
Going well, and yourself?
Great, thank you. Good week again.
Yes, it's another great week, and we're so many great things happening, and which leads me to what I want to really focus on in today's podcast was around an event that I put on recently, and how we utilized our virtual team to pretty much do the majority of the organization and setting up of the event.
Wow, I'm so excited to talk about this topic because, you know, obviously I've had a lot of experience and I have big virtual teams myself now, but I haven't put on an event yet. So I'm very keen to pick your brains on how you interacted with the team and because you pretty much offloaded most of the setting up of this event, didn't you, to the virtual team?
Actually, all of it. It was unbelievable. So I'll start with how this whole thing came about, and then we can go from there.
Yeah.
Like many of us, I was sitting around and I came up with this concept for this event that I wanted to host locally in my local area. I live in the Sutherland Shire, and I thought, you know what, I've never done an event for the local business community. I want to put something on for the local business community. And as I said, had one of those moments, light bulb, sounds great, how are we going to do it? So I went to my whiteboard and I literally whiteboarded up the whole event. So I'm like, we need a venue, we need landing pages, we need payment pages, we need marketing, we need all the aspects that we needed. And I looked at it and I went, oh my goodness, how is all of this going to get done? And I'd set myself this ridiculous timeline. Like I came up with the idea in late September, and with the intention of doing this in the middle of November. So I literally gave myself 6 weeks to do this event. And then I started to think about, well, who could do aspects of this? Who could do this part? Who could do that part? And that's where I'm like, well, I've got this amazing team of people around me, but there was some gaps. And so I think the first thing I did, I think, was get clarity on what the whole thing needed to look like and who needed to then be a part of it. And I just happened to see my sister that day, she's on maternity leave at the moment. She's with her second child, and she used to be in events. And I said to her, do you want to make a little bit of extra money? She said, what do you mean? I said, well, do you want to work from home and coordinate the organisation of my event for me?
Yeah.
And she said, yeah, sounds great. You know what I mean?
Family member, though, that's key. That's great. Someone you trust. Because what I'm thinking there is, you know, putting on an event, I mean, maybe just for me because I don't do events yet, but putting on an event feels like quite a stressful thing. You know, it's a pretty big thing to do. So to have someone, I guess, who had a background in events who could maybe coordinate with you was very handy to get things started.
That was the key, more so than probably being a family member, was that she had the expertise. So I didn't have to hold her hand through the process. So I literally, what I did is I took a photo of my whiteboard and I did a video. I took the photo, put it up on, and did a Camtasia video talking through the whiteboard and what I had done and how I wanted the event to be, how I wanted it to look, feel, etc. And that video was probably 8 minutes.
Yeah.
And I sent that to Rose, and that was what she based everything that she needed to do from, was that 8-minute video.
And that's key, I think, because a lot of people will create plans, you know, I mean, even a whiteboard plan is a pretty good start, but to actually put context around it, because sometimes what I see people doing, and I've probably done this myself, is you create a process or you create a map of what you think you want something to look like a product launch or something. But without your voice and putting context around what you mean and what you want to portray, a lot of it gets lost in translation. A lot of it gets lost without the translation, I guess.
Correct. And you know what? I think for that particular role, it was essential that it was someone local, someone that could converse directly with everyone they needed to, here in Australia. And
Yes.
and I think choosing the person to take up specific roles, you need to look at what are they going to be doing. I needed someone in that role that could take quick instruction, who I didn't need to necessarily walk through everything in a really slow and methodical manner. I needed to give her a high-level overview and then enable her to do what she does,
And then did you connect her? So I'm assuming the next step, and I'm probably jumping ahead here, but you obviously have a big team. I mean, you've got virtual staff in the Philippines, you've got people in Australia, you've got people in the States. Did you then give her the list of who's on your team and who you felt would perform what role? Or talk to me about the team that you put in place.
So the next step was exactly what you mentioned. What I did was I not only gave Rose all the contacts she needed, but then I introduced her to each of them and positioned her in what her role was with this project. So all of them knew that she was heading the project up.
Oh, that's key. I was just about to ask that, because there's a level of what I see people doing, and I've seen people do this with events as well, is they decide they want to put an event on. It might be a small one, could even just be a webinar, to be honest. And then they just fling it at their VA in the Philippines and expect them to be able to coordinate and make it all perfect without much sort of leadership, I guess. I mean, you were still leading the concept and putting all the pieces of the puzzle in place in terms of the team and deciding who's responsible for what bit. Correct. Would that be fair to say? And I think that's something a lot of people miss. And I don't know whether you see this happening, but I see people forgetting about the leadership position that you have to take even when you have a virtual team.
Correct. I mean, the natural person that this could have gone to would have been Vanessa, my personal assistant. But the reality is, as talented as Vanessa is, it still needed someone with the event expertise to be able to see it through, because there's specific questions that needed to be asked, specific questions around the hotels, the room size, etc., etc., etc. So what I did was I sent Rose the video. She watched it. I then connected firstly I connected Vanessa with Rose, because Vanessa, being my assistant, needed to know what was going on. She needed to be across what my aspects of this were. And what Vanessa did, I sent Vanessa the same video I sent to Rose, asking her to get all of the tasks that I mentioned and put them into Asana.
So she was very clear, because this is the other thing. It wasn't just connecting Vanessa and Rose. It was also making sure that Vanessa is very clear on what role she plays in this bigger project. Because when there's teams involved in a project, what I see happening and going wrong is each member of the team doesn't really know what particular job or role they're playing. And then you end up in a situation where someone says, oh, but I thought she was doing it, or I thought they were doing it, and then nothing happens.
Correct. And
that happens a lot.
And that's the beauty about getting it into Asana as well.
Yeah.
And so once it got into Asana, there were still some gaps as to who'd been assigned certain things. So there was, outside of Rose and Vanessa, then I've got Alex, who helps me with my slide preparation. And Alex is a virtual assistant who lives in Romania. And I've been working with Alex for probably about 3 years now. And I met him through Elance.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd been testing different suppliers through Elance. And we'd done a few projects together, and he'd done a great job. And that's where I then, at that point, a few years ago, said to him, well, I'd like to keep feeding you work. Let's come up with a pre-negotiated price and delivery time. So on slide decks of 100 slides or less, it's 48 cents a slide, and there's a 48-hour turnaround. And I supply Alex with I'll either supply him with like a wireframe PowerPoint, which just has literally topics in each slide, or I'll provide him with a mind map, with each branch of the mind map being a slide in the slide deck. He understands the style that I like and the sort of template that we use, and he turns it around.
Now, I want to stop you there for a second because I find I've got so many interesting things to say here. What I love, firstly, is that you've got different members of the team and you're recognizing that different people have different skill sets, and you're not expecting your VA, Vanessa, your personal assistant, to be a jack of all trades and to be brilliant at everything.
Correct.
So, and Alex is obviously a specialist in building slides and presentation slide decks. However, you've, by the sound of it, still spent a lot of time with Alex making sure that he understands your style. How long did that take?
I think probably 2 or 3 projects initially.
Yeah, so he didn't get it right on project. I mean, it's very difficult because obviously I see a lot of people getting tripped up in this area when it comes to slides or images for social media. And they throw their hands in the air the minute the first image isn't perfect. And I sort of think, well, really, things that are subjective take a lot of working together, feedback, trial and error, and not just assuming the other person is stupid and can't understand your brand, but that it doesn't matter who they are. Even designers in Australia will take time to understand what's in your head and what you like. Yeah, that takes work.
And what I've found is that with the mind map, again, I do a quick audio that goes with it. Mm-hmm. And it's in the... If I rush that initially up front, then there's a lot of revisions. If I take the time to explain the presentation, the essence of it, go through quickly each slide and what the context of the slide is, often now, like on a 100 slide deck, there's probably, less than 10 slides that I'll need images revised. So less than 10%. And he turns it around in 48 hours with less than and unlimited revisions. But I think the important thing to note, though, Barb, is that I'm paying 48 cents a slide. So I'm paying less than $50 for a task that would probably take me personally 2 days to do.
Yeah.
And so if it doesn't come back right the first time or the second time or the third time, you know what? It's still saving me so much time and money. It's just, you've got to put it into the right context of what's going on here.
Well, what I think there as well, and I'm probably labouring this point a bit too much, but because I see people getting tripped up so badly in this area, you're at that point now where you go back with 10% of the slides maybe needing revisions. But on the first project you did, how did that one go? I mean, you would have had to spend, you would have spent time with him.
Correct. Sort of. Yeah, correct. So I think the first one, it was that long ago, but let's say that there was 30 or 40% back then. But the thing was, and this is why I chose him as my preferred supplier, was that he got it quickly. Like, I'd worked with other suppliers before, and they'd done an okay job, but he really wanted to get it right, and he was really open to getting it right, and he was the first person that actually wanted to have a conversation with me via Skype. So there was a lot of positives. Hence, for me personally, investing the time to get it right has paid off tenfold.
Well, that's the thing, and that's the key point. The thing you've just said there, investing the time initially up front has paid off tenfold. And honestly, that's happened to me as well. I mean, I have had to invest time in all of my team. At times when I really didn't have the time, but it pays off so massively in the end. But it may take a few months for that to pay off. It could take a year for it to really pay off. But it's so worth the time investment at the time. And I see people not wanting to make that initial time investment. What I hear people saying to me are things like, I just don't have time. I don't have time to talk to them. I wanted them to do it straight away. And I go, well, nobody really. And again, let's be honest. You're paying, cents on the dollar or whatever. If you're getting someone for $8, $9 an hour, like what we do through Virtual Angel Hub, really, I'm not saying you get what you pay for, but you have to invest some time initially to get the returns that you want. And you will.
And it's irrelevant whether you're paying $8 or $80 an hour. You still have to invest the time.
Still have to invest the time. Absolutely. I mean, I've worked with strategists out there that I've worked with designers in Australia that cost me an absolute fortune. And honestly, I felt like it would have been easier to do it myself because it took them so long to get what I wanted. But that's just the nature of of working with people, I think, in any industry.
Correct.
Okay, so I've probably laboured on that one a bit too long.
No,
So tell me about the next. So you got Alex going with the slides.
Yes,
and project managing. Vanessa was managing Asana and making sure all the tasks were assigned and kept moving.
Correct. Yeah. And so it was the end of September, and then I took a week off, so I'd set Rose up before I went away, and by the time I got back, within a week, I had a short list of 2 venues. I had an appointment in my diary to brief the copywriter. I had a sketch up, like a wireframe of the landing page. This is all within a week. Mm-hmm. While I was off in Hamilton Island enjoying a family holiday. And that's the beauty of it. I could do all of that and have all that happening. Mm-hmm. I got back. I chose a venue. That was sorted. The copywriter interviewed me about the event. He then went off and did his piece. I briefed Alex after I got back, so then he was working on the presentation. And then the gap was, how are we going to fill the room? We wanted to put 30 people in the room.
Now, I want to just pause there for 1 second because I'm very interested in the week-long holiday that you had. And I have a couple of questions that I think are key questions that the listeners are going to miss a couple of things here potentially, because I see people missing this. Before you left on holiday, how did you set them all up to know what your expectation was for results when you came back? So did you say, look, Rose, I need to have, by the time I come back, I want to have a list of venues, minimum 2. Vanessa, I need to, how did you set that up? Or did they just intuitively know what to have done by the time you got back? How did you lead?
It was all in Asana.
So, but you were leading that, weren't you? So you set them up for success. Because I see a lot of people expecting that in their head, but not leading that. And just going, oh, well, I assumed that she would know by the time I got back that she would need to do this, this, and this. And I think assumptions are very dangerous in this.
Absolutely. Yeah. Rose knew that on the Tuesday after I got back, we were going to have a phone call and that she needed to present to me the venues.
I love that because, we talked on this podcast before. I think it was actually in our first show. You mentioned something that was just so key. There's a difference between having a meeting and having a chit chat.
Correct.
So you had organized a meeting with Rose for the Tuesday when you came back, and there was a very clear agenda as to what was going to be talked about.
Correct.
And what she had to present to you. So you had set that up before.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was the same with Vanessa, and that was before I went away. They were the 2 keys that needed to happen. And the third person that needed to be involved was the meeting needed to be set up with the copywriter. So that had to be done for when otherwise we wouldn't have got the event ready in time, and we wouldn't have been able to market it.
So I just love there though that although you weren't doing any of the work yourself and you had somebody project managing it who was Rose, you were still leading the project in terms of what success looks like and where the milestones that we need to, the actual milestones where we need to check in and what needs to be done.
Correct.
What your expectations are.
And I think for the listeners, in any task, whether it's a project like this that you're putting together or just a daily or a weekly task, everything that you set up with your virtual assistants needs to have a clear deadline and a clear description of what success looks like.
Absolutely. And I would even add to that, I say to people, don't just even have a deadline, have a check-in point as well. So if it's a very big project, you want to make sure that, if the deadline is 4 weeks from today, then you don't want to be catching up with your VA for an update the day before the deadline or on the deadline date and expecting, you just want to rock up and it's all done. I mean, you probably need to be having milestone meetings as well during those 4 weeks to check in on, are there issues? Do you need my help with something? Are there roadblocks? Are there people not getting back to you? Things like that can really derail projects. And I see people just setting deadlines and then coming back on the deadline date and going, okay, so what's the deal? And I think really, if you're going to if you're going to be a leader, you need to have milestones where you're checking in, oversight.
Correct. Correct. So then from there, where we went was, I was interviewed by the copywriter. So I spent 20 minutes with him. Then again, clear deadline set on when I would have the draft copy. The venue was set. And as I said, then we just needed to start putting some marketing in place. I wrote 3 emails that we were going to send to our database as well as our LinkedIn. And we wanted to just target local businesses. So we also then had a strategy for, I had a list of acquaintances and colleagues that I have worked with over the years in the local area and reached out to them to help me market this project. I wrote the emails, Vanessa executed and sent all of that.
Okay, so I've got a question here. 2 questions, which I think are interesting to just pause on for a second. First of all, I'm assuming that everybody involved in this project was invited to the Asana project, so everyone could collaborate together in Asana. Would that be correct?
Correct.
And then who was, and I'm assuming it was probably you, you said that, you wrote the emails and then we targeted people on my LinkedIn, et cetera, but you set those tasks up, yeah, and how to do them. And then Vanessa executed them. Would that be right?
Correct.
Yeah. So you were still driving the strategy behind that and not expecting Vanessa to be a strategist in that area because that's not her skill set. Would that be right?
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. So I do see people expecting, again, this is expectations management, I guess, at Virtual Angel Hub. I mean, we get great VAs and put them into businesses, but where we see businesses really fail is when they mistake that person for a strategist. And the expectation is that person can come up. I mean, some of them actually can come up with a lot of strategy when you get to know them better and you work with them for a long time. But initially, they really are people to help you drive your strategy forward and implement things, but as directed by you.
100%. I couldn't agree more. And the interesting thing is, it comes down to why did I employ this person in the first place? What's their role? So once we get clear on their role, then the expectations become a lot simpler. But when we start confusing and trying to get everyone doing everything and not being clear on their roles, then all of a sudden, we're expecting superhuman things from them.
Absolutely, and I actually had an issue earlier this year with one of my gorgeous VAs, like love her to death, and we've a great relationship. And because I was actually sort of doing multiple businesses at the same time, and multiple projects were on. And she approached me one day, and she was really upset, and she said to me, "I feel like I'm not doing a good job. I'm dropping the ball. I'm all over the place, and I feel like I don't know what my role is." And I thought to myself, yes, I had been throwing things at her left, right, and center. And how I had viewed her role was to help me execute whatever it was I was doing. But in doing that, I was actually making her feel very uncomfortable, like she wasn't good enough, she couldn't keep up. And actually, a great person was feeling down on herself because I wasn't clear on what her role actually was. So that was a real lesson for me as well. In, just making sure that the person feels supported and that they know what they're supposed to be doing every day and where they play a part.
100%. Absolutely. I think also to add, it all comes with experience. Like, in this case study that I'm giving around this event, if you'd asked me 3 years ago to do this, it certainly wouldn't have been done with the level of precision and leverage that I can do it today back then. Simply for the fact that now I am clear on who can do what. I am clear on what, I guess, I talk about it in my book about their genius, the things that they love doing, that they're exceptionally good at, that have a great return for themselves and the business. And when you get each person in your team on a project playing in their genius, it's amazing what happens.
Well, it's like an orchestra. It actually is beautiful. It's like music.
It is.
Yeah, because I've had that experience. So tell us. So the event happened. So and now tell us about any hiccups. Were there any curveballs that happened along the way, and how did you deal with those?
The only curveball, actually, you know what? There wasn't. The only, I call it quote unquote hiccup, was that the original room that we had booked was smaller than what the number of people that had actually taken up tickets. So
good problem.
It was a
good
great
curveball.
problem. But again? So I said to Rose, "What can we do here?" And she took care of it. She's like, "We've got this option or this option," and she solved the problem. And what was nice was, you know, I came just to give the before the so Rose was confirming with me the whole way through, so I knew that, you know, we had the room booked. She even wrote me this email telling me, and I've done many events, and I wasn't expecting this, but this is when you have someone that's a professional in their position, this is what you get. She sent me an email the day before saying, "You'll rock up at this time. This person will be here to meet with you. This is the room you're going to. This is what you should see when you get set up in there. This is, you know, this is the breakfast. This is the this." It was just like, I was blown away. Do you know what I mean? At the level of detail and precision she'd gone to.
That's her experience, though. You know,
Exactly.
I mean, I see people expecting their VA to be able to do that for them when they've got no experience with events.
Yeah.
You know,
That's exactly right. And so that's again, putting someone who has the experience into that position makes it so much easier. And to the point where, Bob, I rocked up on, like 3 days before I was practicing my presentation. I get there on the day, everything's there, everything's set up. I plug in, I present, I leave, and we had an amazing event. So there weren't any hiccups as such, and I think that was because each person in their role was playing to their strengths. And here's the really interesting thing about this whole thing. I wanted to highlight this for everyone. The investment, what this actually was in real cash terms in Australian dollars, to put the labour part of that event together. So forgetting that I had to engage a copywriter, and that was that's a different expense. Just the organisation, right, of the whole event. The investment was $230.
Ah, yeah, right, okay, yeah, that's great.
Because again, Rose is working from home, so that was $30 an hour. I paid her $30 an hour.
What I'm noticing here, though, and I really do want to make sure that I highlight this point, though, because what I'm hearing, and I want to make sure the listeners are hearing this as well, is that although, again, I'm going to labor it, you had the team in place and it was calm and you went on holiday, and, but you didn't just like fling the whiteboard picture at a group of people and say, "Hey, I'll be back in 3 weeks and I'll show up for the event." You really were the person who was driving the strategic end of it.
Correct.
Yeah. And you need to take that role. I think a lot of people feel that delegating, I mean, I know we talk about delegating frees up your time, but you still, unless you have a strategist who's going to take that role for you in your business, you are the person who takes that role. And that's a role that is like the conductor of an orchestra. You've got all your team doing their thing, but you still need to conduct the orchestra.
Correct. Correct. And in conducting the orchestra, it's such a minimal amount of effort and time.
If you know how to do it right, though, because I think a lot of people underestimate this, the expertise and experience you actually need to be a good conductor. And that's something I'm really committed to try and get more business owners to learn how to do that, because in the beginning, actually, it is a bit, there is a bit of time investment. And sometimes when you start delegating first, it can be more work, initially, but the return comes later in freeing up your time. I think a lot of people think that they're going to free up their time in week one, when actually the workload can almost double when you start delegating first. But, it's a future. You're looking down the barrel of a couple of months or whatever to get it right. And then you start to see your time free up.
Correct. So I guess if I give a quick bullet point list on how to be a great conductor fast.
Yeah.
Number one is you have to have clarity on what success looks like. As the conductor, you've got to get clear in your head what the
What
tasks
you want,
are.
what you actually want, and then what it looks like to be successful in that.
Correct. Secondly is then you've got to look at who's doing what and does it require specialist skills? Because if it requires specialist skills, then you've got to make sure the right person is sitting in the right seats.
Yeah.
Hence, Rose being the project manager in this instance, right, was perfect for me to be able to sit at the conductor level and not have to worry about any of the detail because she had the expert knowledge.
And I guess if you can't afford to get someone in that role, like let's say you're just starting out or you're a small business, then you have to accept that you need to take that role.
Correct.
Yeah.
Third is making sure that you have like a project management system that is the glue to get everyone communicating together. So if you've got multiple people, in this case, which we did, that were all important to the orchestra and have to play in harmony, they all have to have their sheet music, to use the metaphor.
And it can't be email. Let's just be clear. Email is not a project management system.
Correct.
You're setting yourself up for total failure if you use email.
Correct.
So Asana or Trello or one of these project management tools.
And then lastly, I think, is having clear milestones and check-in points. You know what I mean? So there's got to be, rather than just giving them the project in its entirety, you need to break it down into smaller pieces, like I gave the tasks that needed to be done in that week while I was away. And then I was coming back with a definitive, here's where we're going to meet and this is what we're going to talk about. And if you break the project up like that, then all of a sudden you move with immense speed and everyone works in harmony. Now,
and everyone feels good. Everyone feels good then.
Correct.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work perfectly. And I want to really stress that because where I think it becomes, where the problems tend to arise is either it's going to be one of two things. Either the person doing the task doesn't have the right skill set, so they're going to require more of your time. Or secondly, is that as there's more and more people involved in this, that's where it can become harder. But those things we just spoke about, particularly around the project management system, they are critical for the success.
Critical. I mean, I'm thinking as you're talking, going, I really feel in the last year or two, I've totally stepped into that orchestra role. And we were talking before the show about this, where I just feel like it's such an amazing feeling when you get it right. But the only way I can do it is by having very clear roles for each person. Project management system is absolutely key, and very clearly defined task lists with proper milestones, due dates, and responsibilities for each person.
Absolutely.
And then each person reporting into me on the progress.
So I just want to add one last thing on this. I think this will give all the listeners a really... I'm going to open the hood up massively.
Yeah, go for it.
A few years ago, I was terrible at lists, terrible at milestones, terrible at meetings. And I bring that up because I've learned the skill, and this is a skill. I don't believe people are born this way. It's a learnable skill. You have to commit to learning the skill. You have to commit to the growth, because if you want to be successful in your business and take it to the next level, these are the skills you need to master in order to grow and scale your business.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I was lucky, I suppose, because I spent so long in the corporate world where you're almost put in a straitjacket when it comes to things like meetings. And I mean, you have no choice but to be organized. There's meetings, there's milestones, there's strategic plans. So I learned a lot of that, through my corporate days. And I was quite amazed, actually, when I started working with the entrepreneurial small business community, I guess, how people are so not lacking in that area, but not even knowledgeable about how important and pivotal it is to your success. Is knowing how to run a meeting, knowing how to, direct traffic in terms of projects and stuff like that, how to create processes. And really, if you're not willing to, I don't know if you remember when we had Dan Norris on the show, he said something quite controversial. He actually said, if you're not willing to create systems, processes and lead teams, you're not an entrepreneur. Go and work for someone else. And I thought, okay, it was a bit controversial, but actually there is a lot of truth in that.
It's 100% the truth.
Yeah. 100%. People don't want to hear that, but it's actually true.
Exactly. And that is the differentiator between mediocre results and outstanding results.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point to finish on, Matt, because so many people are getting mediocre results and they're blaming everything under the sun. But the reality is, if you want outstanding results, the formula is actually not difficult. It's there. It's just people don't want to follow it. They don't want to take the pain and actually, get good at this stuff. But I know if I could impart anything that I've learned over the last few years doing my own thing, is commit to it, because when you get it right, the sky's the limit.
100%. Well, I hope that's been helpful for everyone today, just to give a little bit of insight into a real life project and how you can utilize your virtual teams, both locally and overseas, to coordinate, and how cost effective and time effective it can really be when you master this.
Absolutely.
Thanks for sharing that with me today, Barb. It's been a great show.
Yeah, and as always, I learned a lot again from you. So I'm going to be implementing some of that stuff in my next whenever I get to events.
Fantastic.
So until next week, Matt, have a great week, and listeners, enjoy your week, and remember to come back next week for more virtual success.
You too, Barb. Have a great week, and to everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Virtual Success Show. If you found this show helpful, take a moment to share it with a friend so that we can all grow together. Find out more about the inside scoop on outsourcing success by going to our website, virtualsuccessshow.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.